Welcome to another episode of Panakal, a podcast for geeks. My guest today is Devin Kurtz, whose name I spelled wrong initially, I guess. My bad on that.
Oh, no problem.
I type too fast, and sometimes I spell things wrong. Today we're going to talk about animation and art. So how have you been during this pandemic? I think that's my first question for most of my artists.
I've been very, super blessed, so I don't want to complain too much, I pretty much, if I had been just doing the convention thing and not had a studio job, it would have been a really, really different situation, like completely different situation. Because, that my whole convention leg of my business, this.
Yes. Oh, dude, I know. Trust me.
Overnight. Right after also buying all of the merchandise for the year, which was like $7,000.
Yep. My storage, I have a 10x5 storage that mainly is designed for taking stuff from this condo and storing it there while we're looking for a house. And now it's like jammed with inventory because, last year I had a problem where I kept running out of inventory and then I would scramble to order more. I mean, I deal with your dad over at Bay Photos, so when those stuff would sell, I'd be like, I need this now. So this year, I thought, let's be productive and just order a shit ton of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I didn't calculate on the pandemic, but there's a lot of stuff sitting in storage.
Yeah. Yeah. I have such an unbelievable amount of stuff just sitting downstairs. It's but there's no way. Sometimes stuff just happens. Like, it really has shown me that I can't plan on anything. I think I'm gonna live the whole rest of my life differently, in my indie artist game. Just, it's like no amount of preparation could have saved me from the fact that the entire business model was going to be impossible for a year.
Yeah, exactly. On a quick side note, if my audio or Devin's audio sounds bad to anyone, please let me know, because I'm still learning how to adjust the audio in Streamlabs. But yeah, I was talking to some artists early on when this started, and I was like, I had said last year, shows, you can't rely on shows as your business model because you never know, but I meant you never know when one show is going to get canceled or two shows are going to get canceled. I didn't mean a year of no shows, and I was like, holy crap. Because I had people messaging me like, you did this. You said this was going to happen. I was like, I am not like a Grim Reaper here, guys. I'm just forward thinking a little bit. And I kind of wish I had set up my online model a little better, which is what I've been focusing on this year. And I'm hoping to, basically up those online sales and that online presence, because I think a lot of us have to consider not doing so many shows. I talked to a lot of artists who were like, I can't pay my rent because the shows, I was living show to show, which is, I hate that for them, because it's like, that sucks, because now you have, how are you going to make money, and
yeah,
and it was,
yeah, no, I mean, it was devastating for a lot of people. And, I was really lucky that I was doing both the in-house studio job and conventions at the same time, which was tough, not gonna lie.
Sure.
I started doing that when I was 20 and I'm 24 now. So I think I'm starting to outgrow the period of my life where I'm able to do a full-time job and the full-time indie thing, just because I was really burning myself out rapidly. Oh,
there goes your cat dog.
There goes my cat dog. All right, she can get out on her own.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing you did. You were doing early on. I had a corporate job, and I was working the shows in between on the weekends. And there was I didn't have a kid at that time, so it was somewhat, I don't want to say easier, but not as stressful to a degree. But now with the kid, even last year with the kid, I was trying to do freelance work, and I did 2 board games on top of the shows, and that little tiny bit of the freelance work stressed me out. So I'm not, I know a lot of artists who work from home now and want to do shows. I'm like, how do you guys do that? It's a level there I'm not hitting yet, or maybe I'm too old for it now.
I mean, the shows are exhausting. One thing that this year really has shown me is that the conventions really were taking a lot out of me.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I have a chronic illness, and travel is a huge trigger for me, actually. So, like, flying or driving for like long periods of time, like, can trigger episodes of my chronic illness, which it has during conventions before. And more often than that, it would trigger them when I got back.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it actually, I've been sick less this year, like,
Mm-hmm.
dramatically than I was the previous like 3 years, which definitely like let me know about maybe I need to make some changes into the way that I am living my life, because it was not going to be manageable for much longer. So
Sure.
I'm absolutely not saying that the pandemic was a blessing in any way. It wasn't
Right.
awful. But, you know, if I'm going to find some sort of upside, it was that it showed me that, like, first of all, I could, like, you know, make it happen, make online sales happen, or like try to focus on like online things and maybe connect with my audience that way, you know, and sell prints that way. Also, so that maybe you know, maybe when conventions come back, instead of doing like 10, I'm doing like 4
Yep.
or 5, you know.
That's kind of what I'm aiming at too. Like just the 4 ones that I really kind of do well at.
I'm gonna
'Cause
close my door so that my dog isn't going out constantly.
it's all
Sorry.
good. Your dog's fine.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the same, like, you know, you and I were talking about this before we started. Like, you are dealing with a chronic illness. I myself am a cancer survivor, so I'm always scared, like, don't drop your immune system so low that you get sick again, you know. And then when you're dealing with things like con crud, like I got con crud really bad once my first time at Dragon Con, and I was running like 103-degree flu. I've never been that sick ever from any other show. But I realized it was like I was in that crowd of people. I was like having a good time. I was partying and drinking, and then I did it to myself, basically, right? It's no one else's fault. But I got way better at like keeping myself in check after that. And then basically, yeah, the shows. I realized how stressful the shows would make me. I would get stressed out just set up and breakdown. I wasn't even like, you know, it wasn't even like the drive there. Like I drove to as many shows as I could. Just because I hate flying. I have a big fear of heights, even though I live in a high rise. The building doesn't fall. A plane can topple straight out of the sky. People ask me that all the time. You live in a high rise. How are you not scared to be up there? I'm like, this building sways but it doesn't fall. But a plane can duck out of the sky at any time it wants. But you know, I would drive to shows and my anxiety level would shoot straight up the second I was like at my booth ready to set up, because I don't know. I think you and I, you were setting up next to each other at Gen Con last year. I think you and I are the same. We tinker forever with our setup, you know, where people are like, you're not done yet. And you're like, please stop talking to me. Just, I will join you guys in like 2 hours. Just, there's a reason I'm here with headphones on, trying not to be mad at anybody, you know. And then at the end of the show, I remember my breakdown was just like, throw everything into a box as quickly as you can, you know, like it's a horrible method of breaking down because you want to like organize it, but you don't. And you know, anytime I would get sick, I'd be like, okay, how bad is this gonna be? And then if I was sick for like a week, you know, I'd be like, do I need to go see a doctor and check my blood counts? You know, like my cancer was basically in the blood, so I always had to check those counts and make sure everything was okay. But now with a kid here too, I'm doubly afraid of things. If I get sick, she's gonna catch whatever I've got, you know. And I don't want to bring con crud home. Like I got like the flu last year from going to a funeral, unfortunately, but you know, somebody there was sick and infected all of us. And I spent, you know, a week on the couch away from the kid, you know.
Yeah.
And she was young, you know, or no, it was 2 years ago, but she was pretty young. And so, you know, and I know for a fact that other artists in our industry are dealing with their own ups and downs when you do these shows. So, in a sense, the pandemic, I think, has taught us all like how lucky we are to a certain degree, because we can actually like to a certain degree we can relax if you're lucky enough to be able to stay home, but also you're panicking because of a pandemic, obviously, you know. I don't know, man. I know there are shows that want us to come back. It's been strange because there were shows like, you know, for like half the year there were shows who were like Dragon Con's a good example. They were like still not canceling till like, I want to say it was like a month before, and a bunch of us were like, what do we do? You know, like,
please just let us plan. Please just cancel. Like, it's impossible. We can't go anyway. Like, no.
I'm like, can I just roll this over to next year? Like, I remember I was messaging the showrunner like, I told her flat out, I'm like, I am immunocompromised. I don't want to be at that show. Dragon Con is one of the, Gen Con and Dragon Con are the same. There's so many people in there. There's no way I'm not going to catch something,
Mm-hmm.
And then now they've made announcements already for, I want to say next year, but it's this year already. We've already moved into 2021. So
I know a lot of stuff's moving to 2022, and I'm kind of relieved for that. Just like give us a clean start back when things are actually normal. Like
yes.
I would so much rather than it be like on the edge and be worried, because it's like I'm not willing to risk my life, for these shows.
Yes.
And I think a lot of other people probably wouldn't be too, but it puts us in such an awful situation, and it puts the cons in a bad situation when their vendors are having to choose between, health and safety versus income, right, versus possibly losing their deposits, which are really hefty for some of these shows,
I mean, I think both of us are lucky, like you obviously were able to go back to your parents and hang there for a little bit. I'm lucky that my wife works still from home and supports us. So I'm gonna move on to some of these questions so we can get away from the pandemic stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Someone said, tell us about your brush settings. I'm assuming you work in Procreate mainly? I forget.
No, I work mostly in Photoshop. Okay. I really like the Kyle T. Webster brushes. I just think he does a great job, and they come with Photoshop, so they're just like, if you have a Photoshop subscription, you can just download them from the Adobe website. And I've been using them for a really long time, like since back before they were a part of Photoshop. There was just like the Kyle Mega Pack that.
So are you downloading more on? I thought the application itself already had them built into it, so you can download other ones into it.
You do have to download them from the Adobe website. Like they aren't like built in. There's like a really small amount that are like built into the Photoshop you download, but then you can go to the Adobe website and get them. And I really love like the Impressionist ones. I actually have like a really small amount of brushes that I use all the time, and like one of my absolute favorites is from the Kyle Impressionist set, which just has like a really awesome like grainy texture that looks good like almost all the time. Like if you watch my process videos or like my TikToks, like it's like every time I select something and then fill it in with this like grainy brush, it's just this brush from the Kyle Webster Impressionist pack. It's really good.
I should look in, I use a lot of lasso tools, so I'm always just like, when somebody says what brushes do you use, I'm like, lasso tool, like, which I feel like if I started using some brushes, like it would be the next evolution of my stuff, like to add some gradients, and maybe, I don't know, because that's just not what I do.
I make a lot of brushes too. Like I make a ton of brushes. Like for anything specialized, like I have my whole like foliage brush set that I use those brushes all the time. Like I initially made that for myself. Like I was making those for myself, and then I was like, why don't I just share this so that other people can use it too?
Yeah, it's on Gumroad, right? I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, lots of questions here. What would you guys be if you weren't into art? Huh.
Oh boy. You go
That's
first.
A deep question, man. Well, see, initially I had my first degree is actually in web design, multimedia and web design. So I was a front end developer. So I did a lot of code work. So I guess to a degree it was still artistic because I was doing graphic design, but coding a lot, which nowadays I hate anytime I have to code anything. But when I started, I loved it because I thought it was like this super geek sitting there coding away. I actually do have a degree in networking, which I guess I could do if I really wanted to get work. I would probably end up killing myself after 6 months because I hated that too. Art is like the one I always tell people when they ask me these questions, like art's really the only thing I'm good at. And I don't mean that like this is it. I'm the king of art. It's just the only thing I do the best. Like I can get a job at Barnes and Noble. I used to be a bookseller. I can get a job at the Starbucks. I know how to make that coffee because I work there too. I can get a job waiting tables. I used to do that for a living. It's just art has always been the one thing that's kept me happy. All the other jobs were just there to get me through. If that makes sense.
I'm like similar to where like I wanted to be an artist since I was like 12, and I started drawing like at a super early age. Like I was working. We have a digital painting of mine from when I was 2. So
nice.
I don't have memories of a time before I was like drawing a lot. But I think that I think that's something that had to do with it was that I was good at it. So if I had drawn all the time but had been really bad at it, like, and it hadn't gone well, I probably would have stopped. And I was really into soccer. I played soccer for 9 years, so I might have kept up with that. I also played piano as a little kid, so it's possible that like maybe I would have just taken one of those other interests and pursued it. But like the point of divergence is so early, like in my life, that it's really hard for me to say like what direction I would have gone down.
I mean, I feel like, you know, it sounds a lot like your parents leaned right into you doing your art stuff, so you went right into that too, which is...
They're both artists.
Yeah.
My dad's a photographer and my mom is a graphic designer,
Yeah,
and my
so
mom
there
was
you go.
in college for graphic design when I was a toddler. So
Nice.
I was like seeing her pursuing like an art direction, you know, at like an
Yeah.
early age. And then
That's...
my dad was a photographer.
See, that's awesome, actually. That's great. You know, like, I remember, my parents are not artists, by the way. My mom is a nurse. My dad was an accountant, and then he worked for the post office until he retired, basically.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So, yeah, he was a mail sorter. They offered him a manager position he would always talk about how they offered him a manager position several times, but he didn't want to up it because he was just like, I'm good right where I am. And we used to jokingly call my dad the Oak because he had huge arms, man. He was lifting 80-pound bags of mail all day, you know. But yeah, they were not too keen on me wanting to be an artist. So let's just go with that. If anyone, I would say 95. No, let's go higher. Let's go 98%. Bless you. 90.
Excuse
bless
me,
you.
Dusty, sorry.
I say 98% of Indian parents want their kids to be engineers or medical professionals, you know, and I definitely did not lean that way. I don't think I could ever be a doctor. You would not want me as your doctor, trust me. But you know, I still had a pretty supportive family. My sister was always there. My cousins were always there, you know, encouraging me on. So obviously, like, I don't know if we strayed away from this question or not, but I don't know really what else I could do. I'm saying I can do other jobs. I don't think I want to, though, you know. It would be nice if, you know, the IP stuff that you and I both have our own side stuff that we do versus freelance. And, you know, I feel like in your case, I think it's picking up really well. You've got a huge amount of followers. I'm still kind of getting there slowly but surely.
I've been on the internet like forever, and you know, a lot of the people who follow me have been following me for like you know 5-10 years, which is incredible. I mean, I really feel like I've grown up with a lot of the people who follow me. Like, there's so many names that I recognize like on a daily basis that I've seen for like forever. Because you know, I was like 12 when I first started posting on DeviantArt.
Oh wow!
Which I always think is funny because like I'm really good friends with the DeviantArt crew now, and I was too young. I was like breaking their terms of service when I first got on the website.
You were that person. Well, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people did that and helped them like become who they are. So that site has gotten. I went on there like I don't know, a week and a half ago or something, because somebody was like, it's so different to look at now, and I'm just like, it's actually really nice. I mean, I used to be on DeviantArt forever. I haven't looked at it, like I said, in a while, but I used to love that site because that was like my go-to for any kind of inspiration, or, you know, like if I needed, like, a lot of my stuff is, you know, people are always like, oh, you got a great composition here, and I'm like, yeah, I was staring at a bunch of John Harris pieces and I literally just took his composition over here, you know. There's no rule against that last time I checked. So but yeah, DeviantArt, and now they have ArtStation. But ArtStation's is a little, there's so much on ArtStation.
ArtStation out. I swear, like I've been able to build a following every other location on the entire internet besides ArtStation. Nothing humbles me like ArtStation.
ArtStation. I think ArtStation's just got a weird like, I don't know, man. It's got like it almost, it feels too elite. You know, like you have to be in the special club to be in there. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna drop any art on here because I feel like someone's gonna make me feel really small really fast.
I feel like there's just like, I feel like I'm just like not part of like the club of people who like are big on ArtStation. I'm like, that's okay. Like, I'm happy over here. Like, I don't need to be like, you know, I don't need to have a bunch of followers on ArtStation.
Yeah, Tawny's saying she's mad at ArtStation because their newsletters are annoying. Or are you mad because their newsletters are annoying? Or are you just,
You
that's a
can turn them
secondary?
off if you don't want to see them
I didn't
anymore.
sign up for them at all. I don't like getting newsletters from random sites like that. I usually only like getting letters from like my friends who have their own websites and stuff. Um, I've tried to unsubscribe so many times that she still gets them. Yeah, maybe they like to troll you. Um,
Wow.
okay, let's see. Is color picking once in a while something to be frowned upon? No.
I don't think so. You can totally check your colors that way. Like if you have a guess of what a color is. My best tip for this is if you're gonna color pick, guess first, put the swatch down of what you guessed, then color pick, put it right next to it, and then actively figure out what the difference was. So
That's
then it's
good.
not it becomes like an exercise of like training yourself. And the more
Mhm.
you do that, the more you like right before you're gonna color pick, just try to figure out what it is and then be like, oh, actually it was slightly more magenta. And then like figure out like why didn't I see that it was slightly more magenta and be like, oh, it's because the background is really green. So even though it was more gray, you know, or whatever, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right. No, I get what you're saying.
Figure
That's
out
good advice.
what context, what context cues you missed. That then next time you can like think in your head like, okay, now that I want to like do this again, let me test myself again, and like every time you do it, you'll get a little bit closer.
That's that's really good advice. I know I do play that game of like, what color is this, and then usually just use the color picker right away when I see something I like. I also play a crazy game of gradient maps, which can drive you crazy if you do them wrong. Um, which also can be fun if you do them right. You know.
I
Um,
used to use gradient maps all the time. I actually haven't for a while. I should do another piece of the gradient map at some point.
I feel like I do it. Oh, I do it a lot just to get like a step forward into what I want to do, I guess.
Yeah. For
But
anyone who
like,
doesn't know what that is, it's a layer adjustment in Photoshop where you choose like it maps different colors that you pick to your highlight, midtones, and shadow areas. So go ahead, and just to make sure
no,
everyone
no, that's
knows what that is.
I yeah, and I think a lot of people who start with the gradient map sometimes will say, "Hey, this didn't work for me," and I'll say, "Hey, did you map out your values first?" And they
Mm-hmm.
don't, and it's like, well, that's your problem. You know, like if you took a colored piece and just dropped it in there, obviously it's going to be wild, which can have some amazing effects. But it works better if you have mapped out your values first, and that's something I learned from Andrew.
Oh, nice.
Andrew
Yeah.
Art. He every time she would show him a piece, he'd be like, "Hmm, let me see your values real quick," you know. And it's like, "Uh
Oh
oh,
my God. I'm
I'm gonna get taught
always
a
harping on
lesson."
value too.
What's that?
I'm always harping on value too. Like if I'm doing you know a critique for someone, the first thing I'll go to is being like, all right, were you paying attention to your value structure in this piece?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those lessons. Like I'm still, So the other thing is, I'm a graphic artist turned illustrator, so I didn't know all the. I had to learn all the, I guess, rules of illustration. I don't know how else to say it, but like I would not do the value structure. I wouldn't even do thumbnails when I was starting out. I would just be like, in my head, I'd be like, I kind of want this to look like this, and I'd start dropping objects in, right? Like, my early style was a lot of like, I called it Frankensteining pieces together because anatomy is something I'm still learning. But I'd be like, I want my character to kind of do this move, so I'd go look for references. I would like take an arm from here or a leg from there and mash it together, and then draw on top of it to get what I wanted. But thumbnailing helped a lot to be like, this doesn't work. Like you could tell just by looking at your thumbnail, like it's a crappy composition, right? Which saves you time because if you just start putting a whole piece together and it looks like garbage, you've just spent 30 minutes putting together garbage, you know? So I learned
I
that.
love I love little three value studies for that. Three or four value studies in
Yep.
a thumbnail. Oh my God, you can figure out almost instantly if something is going to work. It's like if you can make something work in a 3 to 4 value thumbnail of what you want to do and lay out the composition that way, then you're for sure going to have a successful piece. You know,
It's,
if you can make it work there, you can make it work.
no, you're
Like
right.
what?
I used to do just line art for my thumbnails, right? Just lines. But then I mentor under Sean Murray whenever he's available. um, but he's the one who was like, here, pick 3 colors, like a light gray, a medium gray, a dark gray, or black, or dark gray, and then just make your composition this way. Let's see if it works. And you could tell right away what works and what doesn't, to a certain degree. Black and white makes that easy, Tawny. Thanks. But you make it work, Tawny. I would not be able to do that, you know. Color, I can't do black and white pieces, man. Like, so I'm always jealous when I see something like Tawny's work or like Eli's work, which is just black and white and grays, and it's like I don't have. I probably do if I train myself, obviously, but color is just I cannot not color something, you know.
Good. I bet you could. I bet you just haven't landed on exactly what
Maybe.
the right, like, you know, visual language for it would be, because your work is so graphic and angular. I actually could see it working really well in like a grayscale or black and white like sequential art piece. I don't know.
No,
I
it's
think you
worth.
totally
It's worth
could.
I mean, my
believe you.
current experiment has. Thank you. At least somebody believes in me. My current experimentation really has been to after so at LuxCon last year. You know, Jeremy Wilson and a bunch of artists, Scott Fisher and stuff, were like, "Why don't you try something traditional?" And I was like, I used to do a lot of inks and watercolors back in the day, and graffiti, obviously. But I never acrylics and oils were outside of my realm. So I've been trying to experiment with it. I'm not 100% sure I'm happy with anything I'm creating. It feels okay. It doesn't look okay to me. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. You know, piece of advice Jeremy gave me was just take a small chunk of one of my pieces, like maybe this corner of the tree or something, and try to paint it out. You know, again, acrylics seem like the right way because they have the brightest colors. But you know, I want that pop, and I'm not getting it with traditional art right now, and it's just experimenting, I guess. So, but I also want to talk about animation because that's actually what this title of the show is
Oh
about.
yeah, sure.
You've
Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
you work on I can't remember the name.
Disenchantment.
Disenchantment, yes.
Yeah.
And do you do are you actually animating the characters? Or are you working in the background?
No, just backgrounds. There's actually like this week or next week, I think the next batch of episodes is dropping, or maybe it just did. I think it's the 20th. I want to say it's the 20th of this month, so that's actually
Okay.
like 2 weeks. I could be wrong though. The next batch of episodes is dropping, and that is season 2, part 1, which that's the first batch of episodes that I was lead background painter on. So my
Nice.
friend Faith Schaefer was the lead background designer, and then my friend slash supervisor Sam Harrison was the lead color color stylist, and then I was lead background painter. So the three of us kind of worked together to uh, lead the BG departments.
So can you give me an example of like how that process would work? Like do you
Yeah.
like design it and then someone colors it and then you go ahead, you break
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah. Do you want me to give you the lowdown on like
Yeah,
the
I'm
whole
curious to know
animation
because it
pipeline?
sounds like there's three people involved in creating one background right now.
Yeah, no, it's sometimes more than that.
Okay.
So you know, we just lead up departments, and Sam, who is my supervisor, and she leads the whole color department, and then there's two sides to the color department, and one of them is the painting side of things. Then the other side is like the color, so like doing color keys as well as like, you know, props and characters. And then
Okay.
there's the design department. I started backwards. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So first is a script, right, which the writers will write the script,
Right.
and they'll give it to the directors. The directors will have a meeting with the storyboard crew and the designers. And in an ideal world, the designers would do designs first based on the scripts. They'll design locations, and then the storyboard artists will take those designs and use them, you know, as inspiration for their panels. You know what I mean? Their storyboard panels.
Okay.
You know, so have the characters go through those designs. Oftentimes, those things are actually happening at the same time, which makes
Oof.
it challenging, you know, just on the TV schedule. It's like,
Right.
okay,
That
well, now we
sounds
have a design for this and we have to fit it into this, you know, storyboard perspective that we've got going on, whatever. So then after the designs are done, then we've got layouts, which is the designers doing the actual finished drawings that you see on screen. So designs, usually, like the way that it'll be referred to is designs are usually like pre-production stuff.
okay.
You know, it's stuff in-house. It's like, okay, if we've got a castle, we need to figure out what the castle looks like. We're going to design a castle. Then layouts are what you see on screen. Often in TV, those end up being the same thing. A lot of productions end up having to design in the layouts because of
Time.
scheduling, for better or worse. I'm not saying this is good.
That
I'm just
sounds
saying this is how it
stressful,
is.
man.
So then we have these finished layouts, which are, you know, black and white line drawings that need to be colored and painted. So on Disenchantment, a lot of the time this became more and more blurry over the seasons, but initially we were having, one person do a color key for the location, do like flat colors and like figure out, what is the overall color key, and then the backgrounds would be passed to painters who would do the final paint pass that you see on screen. Those lines started blurring more and more as painters were doing color keys and color key artists were painting. So by the end, most people were doing both. I feel like there were very few artists in the color department who weren't doing both at some point, but not always on the same piece. So sometimes, one person will do a color key for a piece and someone else will finish it. And then then they'll switch roles later on, or sometimes people were doing color key all the way through paint. But yeah, lots of different people work on a single painting. Like so many people so many hands touch like every piece, and then there's like, directors who are looking at it and giving feedback, supervisors, leads who are looking at it and giving feedback. Like animation is so collaborative. And I love that about it. Like that's one of my favorite aspects is that, I was such good friends with so many people on the show that would be like, oh my God, you got my background. I can't wait to see, how you paint it. And I'd be like, oh, great. I love working on your backgrounds. I can't wait to paint this. This is going to be great,
You're like, don't mess it up.
Well, I think what is so fun is that like, everyone on our team is so talented that it's almost like when someone gets to work on something of yours that you started and they finish it in this surprising way, it teaches you something. Like you learn so much from, if you start something and get halfway and then you have to pass it off to someone else because you have to work on another thing. And if they finish it in a direction you wouldn't have taken, like it's like, oh my God, wow, I feel like I just got an education on what I could have done with this, because I already knew what I would have done. But seeing what someone else will do, like, whoa, that's like mind blowing. It's like, oh my God, I wouldn't have done that, but now I might because I see how good that looks.
So it's like a really good learning experience too, on top of trying to do what you know to do best. That's cool, man. That sounds a little stressful for me. I feel like I would probably integrate into that fine if that was something I did for a living. Because I've had several stressful jobs. I used to be a developer, so like, I had to work with a bunch of other developers who would fuck up my code, and I'd be like, thanks for breaking that. I'm going to spend 4 hours fixing it, So like how, I guess, so like when you do like a background for, let's say, one episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
I assume there's several backgrounds per episode, and then do they ever get recycled somewhere? They obviously do, right?
You'd hope. So that's called a reuse. And in an ideal animation pipeline, you do reuse as much as you can, because the more you can reuse stuff when people aren't supposed to be paying, a ton of attention to the backgrounds, the more time you can invest into those shots and make that are supposed to be spectacular, where the focus is the background and the focus is new things. So, ideally you want to reuse as much as possible. How much that actually happens really varies on productions. I've worked on 5 or 6 different projects now in animation, and lately a lot of them have been recent because I've been doing a lot of freelance this year since I am home all the time. But every single project is different. There's a different vibe. There's a different like strategy in every single one. Some are really unorganized, where there's a lot of opportunities where they should have reused and didn't. Not naming names for anything, obviously. I love every production and I love everyone who's worked on every production, and there's reasons why this stuff happens. It's like it's very rarely because someone is like, I want this to go poorly. No, it's never because someone is like, I want this to go poorly. There's stuff that comes up. Ideally, you want stuff to be reused. And ideally, you want to be able to do like time of day changes to stuff too. Like something that's really great is that, if you flat a background in a neutral way, then you can use those same flat colors and you can paint them to night and morning and sunset, and reuse it that way. So each painting, you want to get as much mileage out of it as possible, so that then in the future you can dedicate the bulk of your time to making the really stunning new stuff. And then ideally, as you go through seasons and you collect more and more locations that have already been established and painted, those are locked in, and you can dedicate more of the production timeline to whatever new locations are popping up to make them even better. that's kind of that's the hope, at least.
No, that's a lot of information. That's good. So also, I assume most of this is primarily digital.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think many, if any, productions are doing traditional BGs
Anymore.
right now. I think SpongeBob still does. I think SpongeBob is still on, and I think SpongeBob still does them traditionally. I could be totally wrong. That might have just been like a
Sure.
that I heard,
I mean, that would be
it's
bananas. And do you guys use just Photoshop, or is there proprietary software that's
it mostly Photoshop is the industry standard. Most of the work that we do is in Photoshop. Some studios have other softwares that they use for different things, and it's going to depend on the project.
right?
So 3D software is integrated a lot in animation these days. Whether doing like pre-production stuff where it's just like modeling stuff out so that can be used as reference, or modeling stuff that's actually going to be integrated into the environments. And then also, like for example, on Disenchantment, there's a software called Toons, which is actually an animation software.
Okay.
That the only other studio that uses it is Studio Ghibli. And it has a really awesome like color storage system. So all of the like prop and character color is done in Toons, and the way that it works is that you can set up a palette for like a location or a character, and then if you lock each color, these are flat colors, so it's not painting. You lock each color into a swatch on the palette, so then you have this palette for the location. And say you have 10 locations in this 10 paintings in this location, or 10 things, 10 different things. They're all in this palette. If you go, actually, I want to make that gray bluer, you change it in the palette, and then in all 10 pieces, that gray is gonna go bluer. So that's cool. Is really, really great. So there's different softwares like Toons that different productions will use for that's different steps along the way.
That's kind of cool. I got a egg emoji or something. I'm not really sure what that is. Sorry, I'm new to Twitch. What I was gonna say was because I remember back in the day, one of my friends was telling me how I think it's Archer uses After Effects for a lot of its animation, and I was just like, what? Like, because back then I was still learning After Effects, and it just didn't seem like it can do anything beyond like a minute's worth of like a commercial, but I guess After Effects has grown, so, and Archer's a fun cartoon, so.
We do a lot of stuff in After Effects on various productions I've worked on too. There's usually a department working on 2D animation. There's usually After Effects people, even if the like characters and stuff aren't animated in it, which I don't know anything about After Effects, but like digital effects are often created in After Effects.
Yeah, I mean that's when I was studying multimedia, I used to use After Effects to make like glowy hands or lightsabers. I made a lot of lightsaber fights, I'll tell you that right now. Awesome. Because back in the day, that was like the one thing we were all like, holy shit, we can make lightsaber duels in here. And in After Effects, you have different filters and different settings where you can actually make, this is like where the lightsaber effect would go, and I haven't touched that shit in forever, but I guarantee you now it's a lot easier. I had another question about animation, but I can't remember now. If anyone watching has questions about animation, feel free to just drop it in the chat. I guess I've never had to work for a art studio per se, so I feel like that would be an interesting experience someday if I wanted to. I've got friends here in Chicago who work for I'm trying to think of the right words for it. I think it's like they make online like casino games, or like casino games for the actual casinos, like the digital art for that and stuff. And they've asked me several times to apply. This year I haven't done it because I don't want to go work in the studio. I'd rather work from home. And I think now it's remote work. So if I really need the money, I might. I'm not hard up to get a day job again. I want to focus on my IP, and I got the book out this year, so hopefully I can move on to other things. And
congrats on that.
Thanks, by the way. I'm amazed I haven't lost my mind. Like I was telling you earlier, making a book I thought it'd be easier, and it seemed easier from watching all my friends make books and put it out, I didn't calculate all the subtle nuances of things that I didn't know that are stressing me out from the book. as you know, I'll tell you this piece of advice. If you do a Kickstarter and your fulfillment software tells you add a bunch of add-ons to it, only add like 4 things, because they convinced me to add everything I make, like playmats, prints, metal, and I thought that's not a bad idea. I can make a bunch of extra money. Because my Kickstarter, you know, like people think I made 15 grand on my Kickstarter. I made $200 because
Yeah.
that 15 grand, yeah, is for my production costs to the printer, my editor, and the writers that were helping me bring the book to life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all the add-ons. Like I don't, that's none of that's mine. Now, that's not to say you can't make money off the initial push. Like if I doubled that number, then 10 grand or so would have been mine to keep, you know. But I am me, and I did not double it yet. So, but the add-ons, you know, next one, hopefully. The add-ons seem like the outlet, you know, to do that move. But the stress involved in now ordering the inventory from the add-ons. So like the last, I'd say 3 weeks, I've been dealing with my printer, trying to get the book out the door, my Kickstarter backers who are surprisingly nice. I've had 1 or 2 of them message me a little mad. I get it. It's a Kickstarter and you want your stuff right away. I'm sorry. You know, I'm doing my best. I miscalculated on certain things. And then I'm dealing with vendors. Most of them have been super cool, but a couple of them are backed up, like I was saying, because of the pandemic, and they're trying to play catch up with their customers. So it's not their fault. It's no one's fault, really, unless you want to get political, which I'm not. But it's just what it is, you know, and I'm doing my best to get it. I was hoping to get it out the door before the 1st, because now I have to file, when you do your taxes, you have to show it in the paperwork that you don't have, like I don't have that money just sitting in my account, you know, it's not mine, and I have to show that. So those are things to keep. I'm actually thinking about doing a whole episode about Kickstarter. Hang on, I think we have a question here. Hang on. I'm curious if it's possible to become a full-time artist when you don't have anyone supporting you, or if you have no family. Is being an artist only reserved for those that come from a stable background? What do you think, and what do you notice from the people you've already come across in the industry? You want to handle that one first?
I think it is leagues easier when you have supportive people in your life. Like I can't bullshit it. There's a huge amount of privilege that is involved in making it happen. Is it impossible to make it happen without that? No, there are people who do, and there are people who have. But I mean, when I moved to LA, I was able to live with my boyfriend's mom for like 4 months while I got on my feet, because I was like 18 when I moved to LA, and I was trying to, you know, save enough money to get an apartment. And I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't ideal. You know, my boyfriend and I lived in like one tiny room for like 4 months, and it was like it was smaller than the room that I'm in now. So was it great? No, but you know what I mean? Like, but like having that, like being able to live there for like no money for like 4 months in Los Angeles is a huge deal. You know what I mean? Like that's massive. You know what I mean? That literally was, you know, because I mean, like you can't find rent for less than like $800 a person easily. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to find it for less than that. So that, you know, just the ability to do that at age 18 literally changed the course of my life. You know what I mean? Like having having access to that, like through my boyfriend, like literally like made the entire difference. I wouldn't have been able to move to LA otherwise at that time. And then I may not have been able to take the classes that I was able to, you know, at Concept Design Academy in LA. And then I may not have gotten the studio job that I did, you know, at 20, which if I hadn't gotten that job, would I have been able to stay in LA? I don't know. I wasn't making a ton of money through my independent stuff at that point, you know, so there's just so many moving factors. So, you know, like, it's hard for me to even, you know, like, I can't recommend have a boyfriend in LA who,
no,
you know,
that's not good advice. Don't listen to that.
You know, it's like, I don't know what to say there, you know, but like people have done it. People have made it happen. People have worked other jobs and saved enough to like go get to the place where they need to be. But it's really hard. You know,
it's hard.
World is super unequal and messed up, and it's really challenging. And I don't know. I just you know, I can't bullshit about that. It's like there's not equal access. There's not equal access, and it sucks and it's awful. And I want to do everything I can to change that now that I'm in this industry. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard. What about you? What's your
No,
take on
I
that?
totally agree with you on that. It's not, it's really hard to go at it alone with no support whatsoever. Like I was lucky, even if my parents did not support me being an artist, I still lived at home for a number of years, focusing on my stuff, my graphic design craft, right? Like that was my main go-to. And even, the hardest thing I did was move out of the house, and I moved back to this. I grew up in Chicago my whole life, and then my parents moved to a suburb of Chicago for a couple years, and I hated it. And I was just like, I want to go back to the city. So the hardest thing for me to do was move back to the city with a friend at the time and rent. I worked, and I remember when I moved back, I had, not a lot of people know this, but I was deep in debt because I was, when I was 17, I got a credit card. And I was just like, put it on the card. Anything I bought, I was like, put it on the card. And I try to teach my cousins that lesson. I'm like, don't max out your credit cards because you'll never pay it back in time. But when I moved back to the city, I was like, I wanted to focus on art, but I had to get a job paying these credit card debts down and my rent. And, I remember I was working 3 jobs in the city. I worked, at a local bookstore. I worked at a bar, and then I had my job working. I worked for the Tribune initially as a cleanup artist, I guess, on their Cars Out magazine stuff. And I worked a whole summer that way until I finally got hired in the city at a job that paid decent. I wouldn't say a lot, but by the time I got hired, I had paid off my credit card, but it sucked because all that money I made was gone to this, right? And rent. And then even then I was still struggling, so it's having someone and when I started doing the industry stuff, when I started doing shows, even then I didn't have enough money to pay for my table, and I had an angel investor who basically would give me the money, and I would do the show, and then I would pay him back that money. And there were months where I couldn't even pay the rent, and unfortunately him and I aren't really talking right these days, but he was one of those people that, sometimes, I say people come in your lives when you need them. He came in my life at a time when I needed him to help me. And I don't know where I would be if I didn't, have that extra push. I also had friends would reach out and be like, hey man, if you need to borrow some money, I'll lend you the money. I've, 4 of some of my best friends that live here that is part of my pod that I hang out with, these guys, they would lend me money if I needed it. I guarantee it without hesitation, So it's nice to have that support. And on the opposite spectrum, I know artists who have like lived out of their cars and now they're industry level huge artists, right? And that's an awesome story to tell people, but that climb could kill you. I feel like, it's brutal. Like, and those artists seem like they're doing really great now, but it's like, I feel like that would break me. If I had to live out of my car and then try to get a job doing this stuff, I'm not sure I could. I'm not sure how long I'd survive doing that. And
I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone because like it is possible. You know what I mean? Like it's like it is possible. Like people can and have and do make it happen. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like even with the pieces that I had in place for me, there were still things that I went through during that, grind phase that it's not even stuff I want to recommend. Like we lived in an unsafe like after we moved out of my boyfriend's mom's house, we lived in unsafe living conditions for like a year to get low rent. Like we found a place that the rent was $1,300 a month, which in LA, that's really low. Okay?
Yeah, it's low in LA. That's not that low, but here, that wouldn't even happen here in Chicago.
it was really low, and it was infested with rats, roaches, and it ended up having black mold and standing water under the building. So to the point that like we were like breaking out in rashes and stuff. And it's like I am not the kind of person to be like, I paid my dues, someone else needs to. Like absolutely not. I never want anyone else to have to do that.
Right.
I can't recommend that. It's like I'm where I am now because we had that, but like that's not good. Like that's not honorable. Like
yeah, it's like no one should have to go through that. I mean, so they're asking. We've asked to name a few who have made it. I really don't want to name names, but just know that there are tons of artists like us who built. You can build it up, and I'm not really sure how I should say this. Like I'm not saying that everyone doesn't have a support system. It's there. You just got to find the right people. Um, I think my
Sometimes it's building the support system. Like sometimes it is, like working other jobs and
yeah.
like like finding people to connect with, meeting peers and like building up trust, like building up,
No, you're
mutual,
absolutely right. I
like,
mean,
that's the term for it now, but like, helping one another. Go ahead.
no,
Yeah.
I was gonna say is you're not wrong because like some of my biggest support systems in the last year and a half or so have been people like yourself and like Elaine and like Andrew and like, I can just the list goes on. Anyone in the con artist Discord we're in, like those are the people that I lean on these days when I need to like vent or talk or figure stuff out. There's groups like that out there for every artist. You just gotta you'll find them when you start just doing your thing. You don't need anyone to tell you you're doing something right or wrong. Just do it. I had tons of people telling me my art was crap when I first started, and it probably was because I was trying to figure out my style. But and I dealt with my share of trolls who were like bombarding me with their own shitty opinions. But those are things you learn over the years. You get better at ignoring things like that, and you lean into your friends who are like actually supporting you. For every bad person out there, there's probably 4 good people. I don't know if that number's that high, but it feels pretty good. I hope we didn't like deter you from doing your artwork, though. I think the key is to keep doing the work.
I think what I like. I think the reason that I like being really real about this is because I think what's more of a deterrent is when it seems like every professional in the world is acting like it's
Yes.
easy and possible for everyone when like, for some people it's going to feel like really, really, really challenging. And I think like pretending that
Yes.
it's like, oh no, if you just try, it'll happen. Like, I feel like that is like almost condescending to people who are dealing with like massive systemic issues that affect every that are affecting them on like a very real fundamental level. You know what I mean? Like,
No, you're not.
Our industry is not exempt from that at
No,
all.
it's stress. It's a
becomes
stressful
very
industry.
clear.
Our industry is just as stressful as any other industry you would want to work in. Like even like when I hear people are like, I want to do a show, I want to do as good as you at shows. I want to know what that feels like. I'm always like, do a small show with a cheap table, and by cheap I mean like I think the cheapest you can get is like $300, but you'll know right away if you can handle that level of stress. Like for shows, I get anxiety around crowds. Like people are like, you go to concerts. I'm like, yeah, I stay in the back because I can duck out if I want to. Anytime my friends would be like, let's go into the crowd, I'd be like, ooh, here we go. Like I don't want to do this. Shows are the same way. I stay behind my table as much as I can. Like, I don't know if you know, the Gen Con, like I would let other people go buy me my lunch because I didn't want to walk through the crowd to get my lunch, because that ramps me up, man. But over the years, I got better at, I'm not saying you'll get better at handling it. If you have anxiety around crowds, you're going to have anxiety at crowds. I got better at just focusing on staying behind the table and enjoying myself there. But I tell young artists or new artists who want to start, like, try it out. And if you feel like it doesn't work out for you, don't force yourself to, like, it's like trying to put a square peg into a circle. Don't force yourself to do it if you don't want to do it. Because there's tons, if art is what you want to do, there's tons of other ways to make your art. Shows aren't the end all. Right now you live in an age where the internet's just, it's like your open market. You can totally like Instagram, DeviantArt. I don't know about ArtStation yet, so I can't recommend it. Your own web store, your own website. There's so many ways to reach people. Twitter, kind of. And it's probably nicer there on Twitter now. But I'm taking a couple zings at things today. But there's ways to reach other people, and talk to other artists, and you'll eventually become friends with them. And as you become friends with them, you'll find people that you click with. Like there are people in the industry I don't get along with because they don't like me, which is fine. And there are people that love me. I'll lean into them. And that's kind of what you have to start with, I think. I don't know if that's good.
I think the internet's huge in art, like for especially people who like in generations past have been like just completely denied access from like the more official art industry, because I mean like the art industry being like a luxury business is full of classism and racism and sexism and all of the other, you know, like issues that plague our society, sometimes on
Yes.
steroids, because it has so long been, you know, part of this like elite, you know, like if you go 200 years ago, it was like who was working in art, like upper, like, you know, like upper class people,
People who can
right?
afford it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So like
Mhm.
I feel like the internet is helping, you know, and hindering in some other ways, but at
Sure.
least currently like it feels like it is providing openings to people who like may not have been able to like have access to this industry at all. And I feel like that a little bit as someone with a chronic illness, just because like the art industry is like massively not built for people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, like to an outrageous extent. Like I mean, like it is really, really, really difficult and challenging to, you know, feel like you have any sort of job security in a fast-paced industry where like you can't just go be in the hospital for 2 weeks a lot of the time, you know,
Right.
especially early on in your career. Like having, you know, my internet following to fall back on let me take chances I probably wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Like it would have been too risky for me to take chances, knowing that I could have an episode at any point that
Hmm.
could really like massively hinder, you know, whatever was going on. Like knowing that I had an internet following who probably would be down to support me, you know, and like, you know, that I could fall back on and like do print sales and stuff like that. Like let me take chances that would have been too risky to take otherwise. Like that's kind of like how I feel about it at least.
No, that's a good take on it. Like I would, like I tell artists all the time, like you have the internet and use the internet. It's a good way to test the waters versus going to physically anywhere and testing, like, lugging your stuff around and finding out it's not what you want to do. Having the internet, it's like I constantly post things. Like Patreon is great. If you don't have a Patreon, just set it up. It's free. I mean, it's not free. They take a cut, but it's a small percentage. My point is, it's free for you to like share your work and get some feedback on it. And Instagram is not really free to a degree. It's, but these sites are set up so you can post artwork, get some feedback on your artwork, and if you might be like, I love this piece, and love it. I'm not telling you not to, but you can get some feedback on if you're kind of getting the right audience with your work. And I think there's an audience out there for everybody, so it's just a matter of finding them too. So Patreon is, I don't make a ton on Patreon, but I love talking to my patrons. I set up a Discord for my patrons, and I let them just ask me questions, ask me stuff about the Ancient One stuff, and it actually helps me create more stuff. And yeah, the internet, is there and it's open and it's better than. I feel like it's, to a degree, it's less stressful than going to a show and trying to figure stuff out. And to a degree, it is stressful because you're sitting there sometimes like, oh, I didn't get enough likes on this piece. I'll use Twitter as an example. Sometimes you don't get a lot of likes on a piece, but if you just look at the insights and the the graph that shows you all the hits, sometimes it'll say like 65,000 people looked at it. Okay, like, and you're like, holy shit, a lot of people saw it. They just didn't like. Not everybody has to give you a heart, but it's kind of nice to know that many people saw it. So there's a potential. You're getting your stuff out there. And that's the key. Like, just keep making stuff, put it out there. Make sure it's for sale if you want to sell it. Yeah, and you're welcome. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. But yeah, like,
Yeah, we
fine.
went off on that, didn't we?
Yeah, but I think, like, I like how the one of the things I've always liked about you is you keep it real. You're not sugarcoating anything, which is how I tend to speak to people too. I'm not trying to like hurt anyone's feelings, so I usually will just speak my mind, but occasionally I feel like maybe I went too hard with that, when I explain something. But at the same time, I've been doing this now. I started doing this in 2014. So I don't know if I consider that still fresh to the industry, but 6 years, of building. And this year I thought would be like the year where everything was going to be amazing and all this or 2020, I guess. And,
Yeah,
I got
me
robbed.
too.
2020 was supposed to be my year, man. And I'm just like, so I was, talking to my wife about this. I was like, I have to like kind of rebuild some of that momentum. And I forget who it was I was talking. I think it was Alex Dos Diaz. And he was like, it's not gone. You're still who you are. People know who you are. It's just keep doing stuff and it'll feel natural. It'll naturally just go back to where it was. And hopefully, yeah, I feel like it's going to take another year because this year feels You know, I feel like if there's going to be a show, Gen Con is talking about maybe doing a show in August, and it's, you know, I'm going to base that on, and Gen Con's smart though. They still base it on the vaccine and the numbers. They're not just doing it. Dragon Con, the opposite spectrum, was like, see you guys in September. And I'm like, maybe, maybe not. You know, like, because I don't know about you, but I can't wear a mask for more than like an hour before I'm like, I hate this thing and I'm getting a headache, you know?
I just don't think that until it's like actually safe, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere, just because, you know,
Yeah, dude,
I you know, I have a chronic illness. It's just not worth the risk for me.
Trust me, I get it. I tell, you know, I say that to my wife all the time. I was like, I feel like if I catch this disease, I'm probably going to kick the bucket, because I feel like my body cannot. It barely fought off the flu, you know, and this thing is like the flu times 3. So I'm pretty sure I'll just be like, bye everyone, because you'll be at my funeral in 2 weeks. If I'm extra careful with a lot of stuff. I get super stressed out just going out the door. Like, I got some friends that are talking about going disc golfing today, and I'm like, I enjoy disc golfing with them, but just getting through the building into a car, and then we're in an open field, so I feel, and that's my pod. I told you, we're all shelter in place, so I feel fairly safe around them, and they're very careful, so I feel good, you know. But there's still that hesitation sometimes where I'm just like, did I wash my hands enough? Did I, you know, I come home after that, I immediately take a hot shower and everything. I'm hoping, you know, I'm like, just going through the building is the stressful part, I guess. But I can only imagine what some people are going through. What's that?
I totally feel you. I mean, I like this year pretty much, like, I haven't seen anyone except for my parents this year. Barely. I've seen like 2 people other than my parents, and it's been, you know, like from a distance, and it's sad. I mean, it's like, or last year, you know what I mean? During the pandemic,
I got you. Don't worry.
It's like sad, but like I know it's the right choice for me, just because like I know that like it's not worth the risk. But yeah, I mean, it's so anxiety inducing. Even just like, even though I'm not the one like that goes shopping, you know, obviously like we need to go out of the house to get food, and like,
oh man,
you know,
when I go grocery shopping, I got like gloves on. And, you know, early on, I was like that extra crazy where everything I brought home, I was wiping down. And then, you know, now they're saying the surface level stuff's not so bad. I'm just like, okay, I can de-stress a little bit. But, you know, yeah, even like, you know, my kid's birthday was in December. And I remember, you know, it sucked. We were hanging out in my parents' garage. They were wearing masks the whole time. We were wearing, you know, we're distance. And I'm like, this sucks, you know, but I get it. You know, this is what we have to do. Like, I don't even like want to go into their house, just use the bathroom, you know, because I'm scared I'm gonna like douse them with COVID, you know. But hopefully, you know, looks like we're moving forward, so hopefully better greener pastures. Is that the right? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think things are gonna improve, and I think that like, not that I'm not trying to like on the bright side, but like, you know, this pandemic really has exposed how much of like the struggles that we face, like not just in this industry, but like in the whole world, are like really, really massively not personal failures, but like gigantic systemic failures.
Yeah.
So like maybe at least like we will be better, you know, like bringing it back to like as artists at recognizing that like, you know, people who are struggling to like make it or whatever, you know, it was true before the pandemic, and it'll be true after the pandemic, that like most of the time, if not, actually, no, I'm going to say all the time, like there's other factors at play, and that like maybe we can at least take the pressure off ourselves. It's because, you know, like things went so massively wrong this year, and there was zero control we have over it. So at least maybe I'll be able to recognize like in the future to be kinder to myself, that like, oh, that was probably happening other times too, and I just didn't see it because it wasn't so obviously pronounced, you know. But like maybe I could be kinder to myself and be like, oh yeah, we've got to slowly improve everything, instead of like try to feel like, you know, if I'm not making this work in this moment, then there's a problem with me as an individual.
No, learn to forgive yourself, man. That's good advice. Is one of those things I struggled with early on. I would always be like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not moving forward? Why is this not selling? Why is this not moving? Why is this piece not working? It's like, you're dealing with a lot on top of dealing with your art. You know, it doesn't matter whether you have a kid at home or not. It doesn't matter if you've got a significant other at home or not. You're dealing with the world. You know, it's like literally everyone is carrying the weight on their shoulders, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we winded that down to a depressing level.
Sorry.
It's okay. I think people need to hear these things, and you know, that's how this show works, man. We go all over the place. I'm not stressed about it. I always say the same thing. It's like, you know, we have a topic. If we go off topic, that's fine. The whole point of the show is supposed to be like just friends hanging out and talking, and this is probably something we would talk about. So, thanks for being on the show. I know, you know, thanks for kicking your cat dog out, though. If anyone doesn't know that joke, I thought her dog was a cat the whole time we were talking until the dog raised its head. I was like,
she's a Shiba. So they're like halfway in between, you know.
Are those like the Egyptian dogs they say are smart as 4-year-olds?
They're Japanese dogs.
Okay, never mind.
Breed, you know.
I'm thinking of another breed. There's an Egyptian breed my friend was telling me about, and apparently their intellect level is that of a 3 or 4-year-old kid. And I was just like, okay, you know, I assume most dogs are as smart as adults, but I don't know dogs. So, okay, cool. Again, thank you for being on the show. Hopefully, I think like I'd like to get you back on one day with like Elaine and a bunch of other people to talk about more like artistic stuff. We'll plan it out. Cool. If there's anything else you want to say?
No, just good luck with the rest of this pandemic, man. Like, you know, we're all in this together.
Yep. Yeah, and any artist that's, you know, feel free to, you can message me. You can probably message Devin too. She's pretty cool at responding. Don't bombard us, obviously. We will get stressed out and not respond. That's your warning. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. I'm going to end the stream right now. Give me a second.